on in closer to the other tables. For those of you at home, where you're sitting is just fine. Well, thank you all for coming out to Beer and SEO. I have no idea. Is this the 6th one this year? That sounds about right. And what's it? Thank you. We would like to thank you all for coming out. And as one of our patrons pointed out, and I'm sorry, yes, the microphone is for the live streaming that we're doing, by the way. So I want to, as one of the patrons pointed out, it's a good idea at meetup groups to go around and just say, hey, who's here for the first time tonight? Could you guys just raise your, no, Patrick, no, it doesn't count. Look at these people. Hey, thank you very much for coming out to check us out. We're a growing group, and we appreciate that. Thank you. How did I do? Thank you very much. We always like to thank our sponsors because they are the ones who are paying for the beer. Go Fish Digital and Adapt Partners. They really do go ahead and contribute to our digital marketing community. They are awesome companies, and we thank them very much so. Also, we want to go ahead and thank Keith from Ecom Integrate, and I have no idea where he just went, but we want to thank him because he helps us out, and he is a sponsor as well. Fantastic. Now, next month, oh, should I look into the camera? Okay. So next month, when you return, we will be at a different location. I believe it's Linwood Tap Room, and they have a barrel room out back, and it's going to be on a Wednesday evening. I'm sorry, we're going to start changing up the date. I know we drilled it into everybody's head that we're going to be doing second Thursday. It's going to be second Wednesday moving forward. I hope you can all still attend, but I want to get that out there, and I'm going to have to say that like 5 different times so people know. But we'll be in a different space, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. Now, beyond that, I want to go ahead and introduce Jenny Halasz. Now, when you guys watch movies and they are having this big issue at a government level, and they're like, we've called every contact we've had, and there's always one name that keeps coming up, that's Jenny.
J.R. Oaks.
She is the owner of JLH Marketing, and she has a tremendous amount of experience in this industry, and we are so happy she's come out tonight to talk to us about super confusing words I'm using. She's going to talk about SEO, guys, and thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Rob. How am I on the levels? Are you hearing me online? Okay, excellent. So I will try to speak loudly so that everybody can hear me. Being loud is generally not a problem for me. Just saying. So I like to start all my talks with a little bit of a story. And this time it's the story behind the title, Super Confusing Words I'm Using. I was on the phone with a client, as I often am after dinner one evening. And my husband was sitting on the couch next to me, just listening to me talk. And I got off the phone, and he said to me, you know, I think I understood about 4 words of that entire conversation. And I said, well, you know, I am big on the super confusing words. And he said, well, you know what, you should really do a talk like that. You should just do a talk where you explain all the super confusing words you're using. So I said, all right, I guess I will. This is a really lo-fi presentation because it's audience involvement. So I want you guys to make sure your beers are fresh, or if you're getting low, get ready to get up and get another one. We're going to have a little fun here tonight. So we will start with turning on the clicker. Canonical. Anybody heard this word?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. There we go. Because if you haven't, you're probably in the wrong room. But anyway, you've heard this word, right? You know that it's used to indicate the preferred page to the search engine. In most cases, Google, although the other search engines do exist, and they do also support Canonical as well. So I've got some quiz questions for you guys, all right? No wrong answers except the wrong one. So tell me, is a canonical a directive or a suggestion? All right. Who thinks suggestion? Okay, anybody think directive? Okay, we got people who just have to be different. The answer is that it's a suggestion. It is only a suggestion. Google is free to ignore the canonical, to break the canonical, to choose something else entirely, as is any other search engine. It is not a directive like other things like robots.txt if the robot's going to follow it. But we'll get to that. Oh, what causes Google to ignore it? You guys got kind of a sneak preview there. Any ideas on what would cause Google to ignore a canonical suggestion? They think you made a mistake? That's a good one. Got one in the back? Another page has a better fit? Okay. Heck no. Come on, there's a couple obvious ones. What does a canonical do? No? All right. So content that's not identical. If you try to use a canonical on content that's not identical, the search engines will ignore it, because the purpose of a canonical is to differentiate the correct page when the content is identical. Another reason Google might ignore a canonical is if you set it as a canonical, but then everything within your site you link to the other page. If you are giving Google a lot of signals that that is not the right page, then they will not pay attention to it. Internal links, external links as well. If you have really high quality links out there that are pointing to a page that is not the canonical, then it is highly likely that Google will ignore it and will choose a different canonical. And then finally, well, not finally, there's lots of other things, but the other one I wanted to mention is the XML sitemap. If you are submitting page A in the XML sitemap, but you are telling Google that page B is the canonical, then it is likely that they're going to ignore you and assume that you made a mistake. All right, crawling. How Google discovers pages, right? Okay, are crawled pages indexed? Yes. Who thinks yes? Yes. Who thinks no? Who thinks? Can I go with not always? Not always. Who thinks not always? Yeah. Not always. He didn't see this beforehand, you guys. What blocks crawling? Robots. Anything else block crawling? What? What was that? Confusing links? Oh. Well, that wouldn't block crawling. They just crawl the other page. So there's only two things that will block crawling. Robots.txt, very good. And any 4XX errors, like 404 or 410, or 5XX errors, like 503, which means that the search engine couldn't actually get to the page to crawl it. Those are the only two things, or three things, I guess, that will block crawling. What does not block crawling? Yes. No index, no follow, and canonical. Do not block crawling. They will still crawl those pages. Canonical will be crawled. No index will be crawled. And no follow will be crawled. Anybody got a question as to why no index would still be crawled? Do you guys understand why no index would still be crawled? The reason is because no index is an indexing directive, not a crawling directive. And there is a big, big difference. So, indexing. These are the pages that Google actually adds into the ranking algorithm. These are pages that actually have the opportunity to rank. Again, just because you're crawled doesn't mean that you have the opportunity to rank. Okay, do index pages rank? Who thinks yes? Who thinks no? Who thinks not always? Not always is the winner. Okay, what blocks indexing? I just gave it to you. No index. Meta no index blocks indexing. No. So, good question. Patrick asks, what about if you put the no index directive in the robust.txt file? It does not block indexing. Google says that currently they will respect it. They have also said that they expect to stop respecting it at some point because it is not an appropriate directive for the robust.txt file. Anything to add, Patrick?
But it works. I mean, it works now.
It works for now. A lot of things work for now. Doesn't mean they're things you should do. All right. What does not block indexing? Robots. Robots does not block indexing. Rel no follow does not block indexing. Rel canonical does not block indexing. Again, rel no follow and rel canonical are suggestions, not directives. That means if Google wants to index that page, they will go right ahead and index that page, and you will just have to deal with it. Robust.txt tells Google not to crawl. It does not tell them not to index. Anybody ever seen a result on Google or any search engine for that matter where it says, where it has the page ID there, the page URL, and it says, we were not able to provide a description for this page? Anybody ever seen that? Yep. That's what happens when you have something blocked in robots.txt so that it cannot be crawled, but it is not also no indexed, because Google may feel that it's still a relevant page to show you, even though it's blocked in robots.txt. Little aside, interesting little current event. Anybody hear about TurboTax? Yep. Yeah? You guys hear about what they did? No. So a while back, all of the different tax providers made a deal with the U.S. government that the U.S. government would not put anything on the IRS site or send out anything to taxpayers that said that they could file for free. Because under certain circumstances, you can file for free. There's no cost to file your taxes. They said, all right, if you guys don't send anything out about that, we will make pages on our site that show people how to file for free if they qualify. And the IRS and this kind of consortium at the government said, okay, deal. Well, guess what TurboTax did? You'd think so, wouldn't you? If they no indexed it, that would make sense, right? You know what they actually did? They blocked it in robots. Oh yeah, for ticket refunds? Nice. Really? Wow, that's even better. Yeah, they no-indexed it, which meant that, or they blocked it in robots.txt, which meant that if you searched for it, you could still find it. But you had to search for it very specifically to be able to find it. There probably should be, right? But so it was really interesting to me because I saw these articles done by ProPublica and these other publishers that said, we talked to SEO expert Joe Schmo in Brooklyn, New York, and he said that because they blocked it in robots.txt, that meant, don't take pictures of my butt. The SEO expert said that because they blocked it in robots.txt, that meant that it wouldn't show up in search results. To which I about threw the computer across the room and said, no, that's not right. SEO expert, my butt. So, why might a page that's marked no index be ranked? We just went over this. If others are linking to it, internally or externally. If the search engine has already found that page and you put a no index on it after the fact, they just won't go and update it, but it'll still be in the index. If you want it actually out of the index, you have to do a URL removal request. Or 404 it. Okay, filters. Anybody know what filters are? They're commonly called penalties, which isn't actually accurate. Okay, so filters are elements that are added in after the algorithm runs. They're not part of the algorithm. They sit kind of on top of the algorithm. And I think a lot of SEOs get confused about this. So can you think of a reason a page might be filtered? Porn. That's a good one. I didn't even think about that, but yes. So if it's classified as an adult site, JR knows all about that. I think that's the first time I've ever seen you blush. That's fun. I'd see that more often. So, yeah, if they've engaged in bad behavior, if they're classified as an adult site, or if Google thinks it's dangerous for whatever reason, it might be blocked. That commonly happens when a site gets hacked. What's a penalty? I'll go ahead and give you this one. It's something SEO's made up. There's actually no such thing as a Google penalty. There's a filter, and there's a manual action. And they're not the same thing at all. There's no such thing as a penalty. There's no such thing as an algorithmic penalty. It's just something that SEOs talk about because we needed a name for it. Now, I can call it a manual action or a filter all day long. It still feels like a penalty because you're still getting knocked down in the search results. So, you know, to each their own, call it what you like, but just know that penalty is actually not a thing. Also, an algorithmic penalty is another name for a filter. Again, something SEO's made up, but isn't really a thing. Now, manual penalty is actually a manual action. And a manual action will be sent to you in Google Search Console. If you have a manual action, you will know it. If you don't have Google Search Console created for your site, do it now. Like, just pull out your laptop right this minute and do it. But even if you don't, if you actually verify a site in Google Search Console that has a manual penalty on it, or a manual action, see, there I go, I'm doing it, that has a manual action on it, then you will immediately get an email to the email address that you signed up with that lets you know that. So if you have a manual action, you know it. I don't know what's funny, Rob.
Which most people don't even know about the email address that they set up for Google search.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's very true. All right. So, little bit about how search engines work. Who here thinks they know how search engines work? Yeah? All right. All right. Well, come on up here. Come on up here and show us.
Come on, Rob.
So actually, it's pretty simple, really. And all search engines work this way, plus or minus certain elements. A crawler goes out and, is this not going to show on the thing? Oh, it doesn't show on the thing. Okay. A crawler goes out and it crawls things on the web. It can get there any number of different ways. But it's going to go out and it's going to crawl things on the web. It's going to immediately throw out anything that's blocked. So if it's robots.txt or it's blocked by a bad response code, it's going to throw it out, or it's going to put it to the side for later. Once it gets all this information in, it's going to take all the information it gathered from crawling and all the information it gathered from the link graph, which means the way that all those pages fit together. And it's going to put it into what's called a crawl scheduler. And this is like the search engine terminology here, crawl scheduler. What that does is it kind of pre-ranks all the pages based on the order that they're going to be crawled in. It's a very highly technical and automated computer-driven process. It's not like you could go somewhere and see where am I on the list, because that just doesn't exist. It's all done through a computer program, and Google is constantly crawling and constantly adding things to the crawl scheduler, and this is a process that happens in real time. Even as I'm talking now, they've probably crawled another 3 million pages, so just be aware of that. Once it's in the crawl scheduler, it's going to go out and it's going to crawl in the order that it pre-ranked those pages in. And it's going to attempt to do a first render on that content so that it can see what's on those pages. As it finds content, it's going to put it into a database. As it finds that information, it's going to decide whether it's going to add it to the index or reschedule it for a later crawl. That last piece is really important. This is why you can get crawled, but you don't necessarily get indexed. The index is a separate process. And a lot of pages don't make it past that threshold. When you have pages that don't show as indexed in Google Search Console, it's because they went to the crawl scheduler, Google did its first render, and found that there wasn't anything of value there that they wanted to include in the index. So you have to make it past that first step. Yeah?
Do you recommend if you run into that or you see that on a number of pages to update that content, refresh that, or how should you go about changing that content so it is indexed?
If you see that over a period of an extended period of time, you have content that's not getting indexed, according to Google Search Console, not according to doing like a site colon search. If you see stuff that, according to Google Search Console, is not getting indexed, then there's a reason for it. Either it's crappy content that has no value, or it's just okay content that doesn't have any links pointing to it internally or externally and seems to have no value. Or there's some technical reason that they're not crawling and not getting that information. Now, remember I said it's going to do kind of a first render. If you have, for example, a wholly JavaScript-driven site that doesn't do any type of pre-render and doesn't allow any of the content before the DOM, before the first contentful paint, then there's a really good chance it's not going to get added to the index. So things like that can be a problem. Yeah.
So Google does the duplicate content check on the first render, right?
Okay.
So
Yes.
from my understanding, would you confirm that?
As I understand it, yes.
Even before the first crawl.
Like when they
Yeah.
crawl, they like, this is content that's substantially like this other content.
Yes.
So that informs that informs their crawler that, I mean, it's basically an efficiency thing, right? If we've already seen
Yes.
this exact content before, why would we need to recrawl it, right?
Yes.
So I guess my question is that obviously a lot of pre-rendered JavaScript sites have a lot of content that's not. So do you see Google changing how they're working that? Because there's a strong focus on moving to really understand JavaScript and enough to like update their entire crawling infrastructure. Do you see that changing essentially?
I don't see the basic concept changing of how we do crawl and then index.
And specifically with duplicate content checking
Yes.
prior to index or to fully rendering.
But I do think that they're doing some updates to try and give more leeway to JavaScript-driven sites. I think that what we'll see is if they are able to render content that is appreciably similar, it will be treated the same way as duplicate content is now. However, I think that and this is just conjecture, this, like everything else here is fact, but this is conjecture. I believe that Google will start to find adjust the crawler so that it will give kind of more leeway to things that pre-render without anything there at all. If the duplication is that there's nothing, or that there's only a top nav or something like that, I believe that they'll try to make that smarter. I also think that they're trying to get a lot better at rendering JavaScript even on the first pass. So that's going to happen as well.
I fully agree with that last point. They
Yep.
probably will combine that process, but to JR, I want to point out they actually will combine. I want to say they will combine duplicates before they even crawl. If they've seen a pattern that like you've got the same content on this subdomain as this folder or in this same section as this other section, a lot of times before they've even crawled, they will have determined that that's going to be duplicate, and they'll go ahead and combine that before the initial crawl.
I've just seen it across domains.
You're talking about, I'm guessing, since JR says he's seen it across domain, a lot of JavaScript sites look the same in the initial code render, and they will actually fold those together before they've rendered the content to see if, hey, is this actually different, right?
Yeah, this is something that they're really struggling with right now, guys. And so I definitely think that they're going to continue to evolve this process and make it better and better. But I still believe that the basic function of a search engine is going to remain the same. So once it's added to the index or it's rescheduled back into that crawl scheduler, then it's going to recrawl and render. And this is where, as we're talking about, JavaScript issues become really important. And then also, if you have listened to any of the sessions that Martin Splitt from Google has done, he talks a lot about the difference between hybrid and dynamic rendering. And this is way too complex to get into here, especially without visual aids. But just keep in mind that if you're dealing with a JavaScript site, you may need to look at some alternate ways of rendering that content so that it still loads quickly and so that Google doesn't see it as duplicative, as JR had pointed out. Then this is what happens. And this is where we as SEOs spend the majority of our time. And I think a lot of SEOs just, don't even learn this part. And I think it's really, really important that you understand how, on a base level, this all works. Once somebody does a search query, and all of this happens in real time, the algorithm is processed. Now, the algorithm includes the link graph, the on-page content, the off-page signals, just kind of on page, off page, and then just things we can only guess at. And man, SEOs do a lot of guessing. And I've got a slide about that in a few minutes. But essentially, we spend almost all of our time right here in this algorithm processed and rank determined phase. Whereas understanding all of the stuff that comes before is really important to be a good SEO. Once the algorithm's processed, then the filters are applied. That's another thing that I think people don't realize. So the algorithm is processed first, then the filters are put in on top of that. So that's another reason why you see your rank bounce around a lot when Google's doing one of these core updates. If you're seeing your rank bounce around a lot, you might have some filters in there that are messing with you. And it might be worth, really looking at your quality and making sure that you're doing everything that you need to do. And then the rank is determined. And this all happens real time for every new query, for every new combination of factors, whether you're on your mobile phone or your desktop, whether you're in Raleigh or you're in Chapel Hill, you're going to get different listings because this all happens real time.
And that's the filter that's applying to what you're describing right there. Those are the filters, not the core algorithm.
Filters can be anything from manual actions, things that you've done wrong that Google wants to filter you out for, adult content, location-based content. You also enter your filters in there on personalization and search history. All of those things come into play, which is another reason why it's crazy that people are still able to get companies to sign on the dotted line for, we'll get you ranked #1. For what, at what time, under what circumstance, and on whose device, Yes? How far down when it's determining the ranking is it looking at location?
How high a priority is location when someone searches? You said if I'm in Raleigh or Chapel Hill, it'll get a different response. Where is the search engine looking for my location? Which, by the way, if I'm a privacy nut, I have turned off on every device and removed from my vehicle.
So they're still looking at anything they can get from you, whether it's triangulating your location based on GPS or your last search or whatever. They still know where you are. Pretty much unless you turn your phone off, you're getting tracked. But it's a good question. So it really comes down to the intention of the query and how much local intention there is in that query. If I do a search for bar stools, then if there's a local barstool warehouse nearby, then Google's probably going to show me that as one of my options. But other than that, there probably aren't a whole lot of barstool warehouses in Raleigh, so they would give me a wider net and more online results as well. But if I were to search for pizza near me, or not even near me, that's a Google thing, by the way. If I were to search for pizza, then Google's going to try to give me all the pizza restaurants in the location nearest to me or that have the highest reviews. So it's a little bit of a guessing game and trying to figure out what you think the intention of the query is. Yeah. Where did that go? You take it back? There we go.
This thing is on. All right, back to my original question. So the very first part in search queries, since a lot more search is done by voice, now that I'll say, okay, Google, find me this or that, I'm curious to know is, do you know of any information where that search could also be filtered or adjusted based on someone's tone? Like if somebody makes a request or an ask in an angry voice versus a happy voice, could that affect the results if we want to go by human behavior?
That's a really interesting question. So right now the answer is no. I
can yell at it all I want then, is what you're saying.
However, yeah, you can yell at it all you want. It doesn't care right now. However, Cortana, which is the voice project by Microsoft, is working on this. And you should really follow Christy Olson or Perna Vergy. They both talk a lot about voice search and some of the really interesting work that they're doing at Cortana. That's definitely something that they're trying to do, is to intimate tone of voice and also to do a little bit more in terms of picking up background noise as well. They have some really interesting studies on that. Okay, so that's kind of how search engines work, right? So let's go on to some really common things that SEOs argue about. Domains and subdomains. Why do SEOs argue about this? Anybody know what the most common subdomain is? www. Yes, it is. It is the most common subdomain, which is why I have never understood this argument. We're using subdomains already, folks. Anytime I get into this argument with an SEO, I say, well, what about www? And they go, well, that's an exception. No, it's not. It's the way it works. Okay, what's domain authority? What is domain authority? Anybody know? Yeah, you're not allowed to answer this one. It's something Moz made up. Really, it's what Moz used to determine the value, the relative value of a domain based on the links that point to it. But it's made up. There is no such thing as domain authority. Google has said there is no such thing as domain authority. It's about the individual page. Now, it is the individual page and how it's linked between all of the other pages. And we have some indications that there may be some element of reputation or EAT, expertise, authority, and trust, like all of those things. We have some indication that that may be somewhere in the algorithm. They haven't said for sure, but we can guess. Remember, I said things SEOs can only guess at. It's one of the things that we guess at. But domain authority is not a thing.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
What about Ahrefs saying how domain, the DR is correlated with higher ranks?
It only makes sense, right? If they take something that they call DR or DA or whatever, what does DR stand for? Domain rank. Okay. If they take something like that and put it into a comparison with all the top ranking domains, and they've taken the same signals to figure out their domain rank that Google takes to figure out their top ranking pages, then it only makes sense that there'd be a high correlation there. But it's not a thing. Why do we use www? Anybody know? Anybody know why we use it? Because this is the World Wide Web. Not the letters www, but why do we use that subdomain as a standard? Because we're idiots? No, that's actually not the answer. The answer is because of DNS pointing. So we use our top-level domains for a lot of things. We might use them for mail. We might use them for shopping. We might use them for an admin area or a user login area. There's all kinds of things that we might use a subdomain for. And DNS pointing only works if you could point it to one place. So if you point it to your top-level domain, then you have to create a subdomain for other stuff because you can't point it all to the same place. So that's why www is the most popular subdomain and why, as a subdomain, it exists in the first place. Because other subdomains like mail exist. All right, which is better? Domains or subdomains? Come on, you guys ought to know. We just went through 3 important elements here. Which is better, domains or subdomains?
Are we talking about www specifically or just subdomains?
Any subdomain.
Doesn't
rob.seomeetup.com. The answer is they're completely equal. They are completely equal, and do not believe anybody who says otherwise. Does anybody in the room want to argue with me about that right now? Now, the reason I'm gonna give this to JR because I think he has something to say.
I would have a problem if somebody put their blog on blog.subdomain or domain.com, and I don't think because there's a significant difference between the two, but that if it's on the home, the main domain, then there's a tendency towards there to be a lot stronger link equity towards the blog on the main domain and working with the internal linking system of that main domain rather than a subdomain.
So what you have said is absolutely true. There is a tendency for the link equity to be higher if the page is on the main domain as opposed to a subdomain. The reason for that, folks, is lazy ass developers. It really is. If you link your subdomain as effectively as you link the rest of your site, then it's not an issue. It doesn't make any difference at all. I just set that there so that they're not getting double. What? That is absolutely true. It is generally a separate CMS if you have something on a separate subdomain. I'm repeating you so that the people can hear. But I agree. All right, HTTP versus HTTPS. Why do I need to have a secure site? Really? You think it's bullshit? JR says it's bullshit. All right, well, let me ask you that. True or false, anyone can add advertising to your site if you are on an HTTP domain. The answer is true. If you are not secure, any one of the hops that your site goes through can change the output of your content. And I saw this for myself, folks. I was traveling. I was in, it was actually when I was in St. Paul, Minnesota, which I'll be in a week or so for Minnesota Search Summit. I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. I looked at my own site because I was trying to find a blog post to link to somebody, to tell somebody about. And right there in the corner of my site was an ad. Right there in the corner of my site was an ad. It looked like it had been placed there like by AdSense or something, but I don't use AdSense on my site. I was like, what in the heck is this? And I looked everywhere. I thought I'd been hacked. I'm on WordPress, so I thought I'd been hacked. I went through everything. I'm freaking out. I finally called tech support for the hotel, and I said, all right, why is there an ad on my site? And the lady said, oh, this provider does that to defray the cost of the Wi-Fi. And I went, oh, so they can do that. So I could have a barbecue restaurant show up on a site about vegan recipes. And who knows what else, right? Yeah. If you're not secure, anybody can add advertising to your site. So if you were not convinced before now, be convinced now. You need to be HTTPS. Is it a ranking factor? According to Google, yes, it is. If they have two sites at wholly equal level and one is secure and one is not, they're picking the secure one. Why is that? Speak up. Why? Better quality. Safety. Google has a responsibility to the people that use their search engine to send them to quality sites. That's why if they know a site has been hacked, they will often put a flag up that says, this site may be compromised. So that's why Google wants it. All right.
I'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
Let's get your microphone. Wait a minute.
This is nothing but high tech.
I told you, lo-fi presentation, lo-fi technology
Yeah,
on the sound.
What I wanted to comment is you have injecting ads, but I think the big issue here, one of the reasons Google pushes for this, if you've ever worked with Baidu, most of the sites there are not HTTPS. And what that allows them to do is actually censorship, which is terrifying. They can change the content on most of the sites that are within China to say whatever messaging that they want. And that is super scary.
That is absolutely 100% true. What Patrick did, well, you had the mic, so you guys on online, all 5 of you, hi, heard what Patrick said. So the even more, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but to me, that's a really important consideration. But then even more so, like if you actually want your site in Baidu, you have to either have a .cn, which is controlled by the government, or you have to sign paperwork that says you'll let them control your site. So, yeah, censorship is a definite big issue. Not so much here in the United States, at this point anyway, but definitely a big issue in China and in Korea as well. Both North and, well, not, North doesn't really get anything, but South Korea as well. So big myth, yeah.
Sorry. Do y'all feel like that's the legitimate aim of Google, though?
I don't think that's legitimate. I don't think that's Google's end game there is anything to do with censorship. But I think that they do want a secure web that provides safety for everybody involved. This is something that Matt Cutts was super passionate about when he was in charge of search quality there, and he's written some papers, and even on his blog has a link to a book that he read about site security. So this is kind of one of his passion projects that finally got implemented after he left. So definitely. Okay, big myth here. Is HTTPS slower? This is something I have heard so many SEOs say, which is just maddening. The answer is no. It is not any slower. It is not any slower. If you have a quality SSL certificate, it is not going to slow your site down at all. Okay, next big topic, 301s and 302s. Do 301 and 302 pass page rank equally? Who thinks yes? Who thinks no? Who's too afraid to raise their hand right now? The answer is yes. They pass page rank equally. Absolutely. Google has gone on record and said they pass page rank equally. Is 301 better than 302? Yes, it is. Why? A 301. When you put a 301 on a page, the links are attributed to the destination that you provide immediately. They are immediately changed. The page is updated in the index. And then the page that is 301 is added to the crawl scheduler as like once in a while. That's not a technical term, that's my term. Once in a while. A 302, the links remain associated with the original page. They don't get updated. The page is not updated in the index right away. It is added to the crawl scheduler as often. Again, my term, not theirs. And after multiple crawls in the same state, if there are no changes, then Google treats it as a 301. So the reason that a 301 is better than a 302 is because it will cause your page rank to move more quickly. Not that it won't ever, just more quickly. Patrick, do you have something to say? He's actually joking. Okay. All right, so there you go, 301s and 302s. 404s and 410s. Are they treated equally? Yes. Is 410 better than 404? Marginally, yeah, it's a little bit better. Works a little faster. Same theory as the 301, 302, folks. 410, pages removed from index immediately. Links are dropped immediately. It's added to the crawl scheduler as a kind of once in a while. We're going to go and check and make sure that this page doesn't come back. But a 404, the page is going to be removed from the index. The links are going to be dropped. That still happens right away. It's added to the crawl scheduler as often. It's going to be crawled a lot. And then after multiple crawls in the same state, it's going to be treated as a 410. So basically the same 404, 410 as 302, 301. All right, ranking factors. Yeah.
410s for, I know that I haven't dealt with this in a while, but I know that we used to recommend 410s.
JR is saying he.
So back
Yeah.
in the day when I was doing link cleanups
Yep.
for a bunch of sites, we used to recommend 410ing pages that were terrible from a either an anchor text standpoint or a link standpoint. I don't know if that was for anything for Google, but it was more of a good faith gesture. Do you know if that's something that still happens from a link cleanup perspective, or if that has any impact?
So yeah, I mean, I think that if you're dealing with bad links and you're trying to get things cleaned up there so that you can get Google to remove a manual action or something like that, then 410 is definitely a more definitive position, because 404 will happen if you just, accidentally remove your page. That's going to be a 404. That's a standard server response. A 410 has to be done purposefully. Your server is not going to respond in any standard way with a 410. You have to actually go in and configure it that way in the htaccess file or the http.conf file or something like that. You're not going to be able to accidentally have a 410. So I do think that, yes, there's some intention involved there with link cleanup, but from everything that Google engineers have told me and that I've heard them say on stage or in any of their webmaster hangouts or anything, they say that 410s and 404s are treated absolutely equally. So, yep. Okay, ranking factors. Everybody's got an idea on what's a ranking factor. Are analytics measurements ranking factors? Who thinks yes? Bounce rate, direct traffic, time on site, dwell time. Who thinks they are? Okay, who thinks they're not? Who thinks some of them are, some of them aren't? All right. So the actual answer is no. None of those are actual ranking factors, despite what anybody would try to have you believe. It does not make sense. And so I have had this conversation with Google engineers multiple times. They will not use information in, say, Google Analytics to determine how to rank a site because, hey, guess what? Not everybody's on Google Analytics. They've got really impressive market share, but they're not everything. There's too much noise. I've heard people say bounce rate is something that they look at in Google Analytics. Hey, newsflash, guys, guess what? Guess what you do? You just change your time in Google Analytics. There's a setting in there. You could change it so that it doesn't count it as a bounce until you've been there like 10 minutes. Boom, bounce rate gone. You think your ranking goes up as a result of that? Hell no. lots of different ways to configure things, to make noise, to make problems, that is not a quality measurement that Google can actually use to rank a site. And so they don't use it. Despite what any study wants you to believe, they don't use it. There may be a high correlation between sites that receive a lot of direct traffic and sites that rank really well. But Google is not looking in their Google Analytics and deciding that because they get a lot of traffic, they get a better rank. It just doesn't work that way, folks.
And more to the point of people who know how to game something like that are the 50+% of people who put it on who are putting it on incorrectly and are not getting correct readings back.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of that. So
Absolutely.
they couldn't rely upon that.
Absolutely. So then I've heard, the contrast that I've heard is, well, but Jenny, I can pay people on Mechanical Turk to click on my result 750,000 times in a row and see it go up a position. Okay. It's not sustained, first off, unless you want to sustain paying 750,000 people to click on your link in Google. What it is Google's getting feedback from their own search results. They're looking and they're seeing that, hey, that site that's in position 4 is actually getting a lot more clicks than the ones that are in position 1, 2, and 3. So maybe that indicates that that site is a higher quality, or that that site is buzzy right now. There's something going on in the media and people are clicking on this site. Well, maybe we should move it up a little bit and see if it performs better. And if it does, maybe it'll stay there for a little bit, but eventually it's gonna drop back down. So you can have kind of short-term impacts on some of this stuff, but it's not based on direct traffic or social signals or anything like that. It's based on people clicking on it in Google's search results. Similarly, people out here talk about bounce rate. They're thinking of bounce back, which is not, again, I kind of made that up, but or what JR is referring to as dwell time. So if you click on a link in Google and within a few seconds come back to the same page that you did your search on and click on the next link down, then you are giving Google an indication that that result was not a high quality result. Now again, this can be gamed. So it's only one of about 1 million factors that they consider when they're deciding how to rank a site. Okay, our word count and content length factors. Who thinks yes? Really? All right. Who thinks no? Who thinks sometimes? Who thinks depends on the industry? All right, so officially no, they're not. And again, search engine representatives have equivocally stated word count, content length, not ranking factors. However, okay, there's a big one here. If you write, this is my favorite example, I think it was Gary Esch that said it. He said, if you're telling me how to boil water, and your instructions on how to boil water can be provided in 35 words. Fill pot with water, put on stove, turn on. You know, if your instructions can be given that simply, and you write me a 10,000 word essay on how to boil water, you're not going to rank better for how to boil water because you wrote 10,000 words on it than somebody who wrote 30. Because it doesn't make sense. So again, it's an intention thing. Depends on the industry. Depends on the specific topic as to what word count is going to work the best. A lot of people will say, like, our blog posts tend to do the best when they're at least 750 words. Okay, great. You know, but how long should your post be if you're writing about SEO? Oh, well, like, so I write for, I used to write for Search Engine Land. They wanted us to get to at least 700 words a post. And I now write for Search Engine Journal, and they want, I think, $7.50 a post. I'm fairly loquacious, so I rarely write anything under 10,000 words, but but those aren't for ranking factor, exactly. Right. Yeah. What JR's saying is they're more to make sure that people put shit together that's actually a good post, as opposed to just putting in some drivel and saying, okay, my column's done this month. You actually have to give some information. Yeah.
The idea of thin content on a website, though, is that a ranking factor? Is that in the core algorithm, or is that something SEO's made up then?
Can we table that one? Because we're going to come up to it in a minute. Okay, so according to Google, not ranking factors. According to reality, sometimes you need a longer treatment of a topic. But that's more to do with treating the topic appropriately than trying to rank well for it. Okay, so ranking factors, yes, we know. Titles, H tags, on-page content, links pointing to your site, internal links and anchor text, all ranking factors. Absolutely confirmed by Google, all of those things are ranking factors. Spam, cloaking, hacking, also ranking factors, but negative ones, okay? So they can hurt you. I actually think that with a couple of exceptions, the new ranking factors picture from SMX, they just unveiled it at SMX Advanced last week, is pretty good, pretty good. They've got a couple of things in there that are not ranking factors, like AMP, not a ranking factor, and schema, not a ranking factor, but for the most part, it's a fairly decent treatment of the topic. No. Analytics measurements, duplicate content or thin content, not a ranking factor, but something that can get you filtered. Got it? Length or depth of URLs. This one drives me nuts. It does not matter, folks. I don't care how many subdirectories you have in your URL. I don't care how many keywords you have in your URL. You are not going to rank any better because of it. And the reason for that is twofold. Keywords in the URL, first of all, is one of those things that used to work, and then SEOs, like a 2-year-old with a brand new toy, beat it against the wall until it broke. Length and depth of URL is just foolish. You want a well-structured site. You don't want everything in the root directory. That doesn't make any sense. You want a well-structured site that explains to the search engine, to the user, where they are in the hierarchy of the site. What caused people to think that deeper pages didn't rank as well is because they usually didn't have the internal link equity that was necessary to rank well. If you have a deep page, you could have a page 6 subdirectories deep. If it suddenly, goes viral and gets a ton of links, then it's going to rank just as well as your homepage, because it's about the equity to the page. It doesn't have anything to do with the depth. Meta descriptions and keywords. Great for click-through. Definitely improve click-through. Well, meta descriptions, not keywords so much. Meta descriptions, improve click-through. Absolutely worth taking a look at, but not going to impact your rank. Keywords, completely deprecated, but you can use them. A lot of sites actually use them for their own internal search. Yeah, Frank. I'll repeat it. Go ahead. Okay, so Frank said, you said meta descriptions don't impact your rank, but you also said that a good meta description can improve your click-through, and that a good click-through can temporarily improve your rank. All of that is true. It's temporarily. However, the benefit that you're getting from the click-through will be temporary. Now, a meta description can improve click-through. That's absolutely true. Click-through can be used as a temporary ranking factor. That's absolutely true. However, Google has unequivocally stated that the meta description is no longer used as a ranking factor. So what you write in your meta description has no direct impact on your rank. Schema, also not a ranking factor. Again, Google's come right out and said, not a ranking factor. However, again, schema, properly formatted schema can get you answer boxes. It can get you featured snippets. It can get you other positive things in Google, little additions to your search result. It can get you an in search result search box. It can get you all kinds of great stuff, but it's not a ranking factor. Same with AMP, by the way. I didn't put it on there. AMP can get you in the carousel, but it's not going to get you ranked better. Sites you link out to. This is one I absolutely hate. Google does not care who you link out to. Unless you're in a spam ring, doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, flouting guidelines in some other way, Google does not give a rip who you link to. Link to things that are helpful to your customers. Do not link out just because somebody said, oh, you're going to bleed PageRank. It doesn't work that way. And then social signals. Likes, plus ones, retweets, Insta, Boogie Monsters, whatever. Does not help you. Doesn't help you at all. Indirect benefit is that it could put you in front of somebody who would then write about you and create a document that had a link to you. But the social signal itself, not a ranking factor.
Do you think social signals are part of Google Discover?
Do I think social signals are part of Google Discover? I don't have an answer for that. I honestly don't know. I can tell you that my Google Discover absolutely sucks. It sends me like SEO news about direct traffic being a ranking factor. All right, and then what about filters? Will duplicate content result in a penalty or a filter? No. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. It will result in things being ignored. It will result in distributing link value. But it will not result in a filter unless, again, it's so bad that it's violating Google's guidelines. Thin content, doorway pages, that sort of thing. That can get you in trouble. Otherwise, it's just getting filtered out of the algorithm, folks. And what about spammy links pointing to you? Officially, probably not. However, I'm big on the howevers today, right? Negative SEO does exist. There you go, I went on record. Negative SEO does exist. It absolutely does. There are absolutely competitors out there, especially in very strong, very competitive areas. Things like, gambling and gaming, adult industry, that they work against each other all the time. Attorneys, they're creating bad links to each other all day long. The thing is, it's generally not going to hurt you unless you've already been doing some shady stuff of your own. Because Google actually can tell, for the most part, which links are being built by you and which ones are being built by your competitors. Now, they don't know for certain. They have to make guesses, but they have a tremendous amount of information, folks. They have so much more insight into how our sites are interconnected than we do. Google is a registrar. They know everybody's IP addresses. They know everybody's C blocks. They know whether you're creating a bunch of spammy PBNs and linking them to your competitor. They know these things. They really do. So unless you're doing something wrong, you probably don't need to worry about it. Now, if you are in an ultra spammy industry, then you may want to occasionally go through those links and see if there are any that you can get rid of or that you can disavow. In general, though, you don't even need to touch that disavow file or do anything with that unless you've already been doing bad stuff. All right, so yes, you will get them for spamming, cloaking, stuffing, improper link tactics. User-generated content spam is definitely something you will get a manual action for. Schema spam. If you put that you're rated 5 stars on every page and you are not actually rated 5 stars on every page, then Google is going to send you a spammy structured data manual action. If you get hacked, you may get filtered. If you otherwise ignore guidelines in any way, then Google may choose to filter you. You may know it, you may not. But as long as you're on the straight and narrow, you're generally just fine. Analytics measurements, duplicate content, length and depth of URLs, meta descriptions, schema, sites you link out to, social signals, none of those are going to cause a filter. None of them. Absolutely not. And that was a lot, so let's grab another beer.
Jenny, thank you so very much. We really appreciate you coming
Thanks.
in. Well,
I'm not opinionated or anything.
does anybody have any questions? Has something been rattling around
Of course,
in your mind?
JR has a question. Why don't we
you
let
know what?
her ask her question first?
I think JR can hold his questions till everybody else gets a turn. How's that sound?
Let's let her ask.
I was just gonna ask. I don't know if you said it already, but where is this being live streamed?
Facebook.
Is it like what's the group name?
What, Beer and SEO?
Beer and SEO?
Beer and
Okay.
SEO. I should have mentioned that. We're being live streamed.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, coming back.
And I hold it like this.
Yeah, please.
So you were
This.
talking about, I'm asking this for JR. You were talking about adult content filters that could be applied. Is that based on the intent of the query? Do they receive the query and then say, this shouldn't have adult content in the results and then apply a filter? Is that how that works? Because doesn't adult content rank just fine on its own?
So no, actually adult content is really a unique filter in that it's set by the user. So all search results have adult content filtered out of them unless you specifically request to not have it filtered. And they base that on the content of the site. And they do sometimes get it wrong. I am actually right this minute working with a client that does plastic surgery for post-mastectomy breast augmentation. And they were getting filtered because they had a lot of boobs on their site.
News kind of story site, but they have a very storied past with pretty much like outright porn or borderline. Yeah, it was like really, really racy in the past, and then like over time they started
Maxim level racy or like more?
Oh, not that level. Jennifer's been a little deeper in it.
The content, not the images so much, but like the contents they use, they keyword stuffed. So just like sketchy words they would use, but now they have better content that's more lifestyle, better quality, but they're still tied to that past. So
Okay, so that type of site might be filtered based on like a poor quality level, but generally that's not going to be a filter. That's more going to be algorithmic. If you have poor quality content, then they're just not going to rank you.
I imagine something like that might be legacy backlinks that might be causing some problems on that.
It could also
I don't
be,
usually
yes.
recommend a disavow, but maybe.
Depends on what you got out there.
So this is interesting, but like, I don't remember the context for this post, but I read something. Patrick, do you remember Google saying something about using Wayback Machine for prior content to a site to look at the type of content that was on the site? So, I mean, like, Google remembers everything. Google remembers absolutely everything that has ever gone on with a particular domain, right?
Right.
So that's been
And they have admitted that there is such a thing as a burned domain, like that
Right.
can never be recovered.
Right. So like, at my last job, like when we had clients come to us and we were in legals, which is like full of shit, right?
Yeah.
Like if they came to
In
us,
more ways
like,
than one.
Yeah. If they didn't have like bestlawyer.newyork.com as like their domain name or like just
Back in the
something-
days when EMDs worked.
Well,
Yep.
I'm just saying, if they didn't have like lawyer.com domain name and like it was trashy history, I was like, you just need to get a new domain name, right? Like I'm not.
In some
spending,
cases,
I'm
yes.
not spending 1,000 years trying to get this shit done for you, right? So I guess from your standpoint, what are your thoughts in terms of the threshold of when to look at? Not look at domain history, but when do you make that determination whether something is just like it's not worth the battle of the information that Google has about how shitty you've been
Yeah.
versus creating like new value? How do you make that determination? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's really a case-by-case basis. I have definitely, I've done a lot of manual action cleanup and filter cleanup. I'm trying really hard to use those words instead of penalty. But yes, I've done a lot of that, and I've absolutely had domains that we've just burned and started over. Because sometimes it's just so bad that the effort required to clean something up and then hope that Google accepts your apology is way higher than it would be to just go out and get some great links and rebuild it. I had one client that sold e-cigarettes, and they had a situation where they had a really unique situation because they weren't actually doing any bad linking. Their affiliates were doing it for them. But their affiliates were doing such heinous things that Google decided to punish the merchant for it. Now that usually doesn't happen. Usually affiliate links just get filtered out and Google just doesn't pay any attention to them. But in this case, these affiliates were going out and doing things like injecting e-cigarette links on the American Cancer Society website. They were injecting e-cigarette links on a site about women suffering with postpartum depression. So yeah, there was some really, really nasty stuff going on. And Google decided rather than just ignore those, they gave the client a manual action.
Okay, we possibly may be trying to help a company that sells cigars.
Okay.
And you can't do any advertising,
Nope.
and there's limits as far as cigars, cigarettes, that kind of thing.
Yep.
They do sell also CBD oil.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time that we're looking at maybe trying to do something with the CBD oil, and can you do anything with the CBD oil to link to something else for the cigars?
So then you're
without
gonna.
Google penalizing.
Yeah, you're going to run into Google's acceptable use policy there. So Google has really, really strong rules on ATF, on alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And right now they're still classifying anything cannabis related, including CBD oil, unfortunately, as a tobacco product. So that's it's subject to those rules at this time, and it's a really challenging market to be in, but it's also really exciting. And there are definitely some SEO shops that are popping up that are dedicated only to cannabis marketing. So. Matter of fact, have any of you guys heard of Greg Gifford, like local search guru from Texas? Oh, well, he just left automotive and went to cannabis marketing. So.
You know, I know we have Drunk History. I'm interested in Drunk SEO. That would be a really good series. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, my question to you is, so in your entire history of doing SEO, and this title of this presentation is called Super Confusing Words I'm Using, has there ever been a super annoying word that you've just had to use for the industry and you think to yourself, why do I have to use that, damn it? Like for me, black hat, white hat, because, or the other part could be in the early years, hits, because that was purely meant, it's more traffic, but purely meant to manipulate people into thinking they were getting unique visitors when all it is calling up a page or calling up images. So my question for you is, what term really pisses you off?
Link juice.
Oh.
I really hate the term link juice. I just hate it. But I tell you, one that really drives me nuts is do follow. Do follow. So like not no follow, but do follow. It's not a thing. I did actually have a prospective client that when I reviewed their website, all of their links had rel equals do follow on them. They really did. And the even worse part is that their SEO, and I use that in quotes, folks, their SEO told them they should do that. And they spent hundreds of development hours doing it. So, yeah.
Well, does anybody else? We good? Jenny, thank you so much for coming out. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. You've been a great audience.
And thank you to your son for putting up with us all.
Hi.
Yes. Now, again, next month, I believe it's going to be July 10th. It's on a Wednesday. It's going to be at Linville Brewing Concern. We've gone ahead and gotten the tap room. So that will be next month. And next month, we'll be hearing from two speakers. We're going to split it up a little bit. It's going to be our very own Grayson Parks. He's out there somewhere. And we're going to have Phil Buckley as well. One last thing. Our first beer is what? Oh, I have no idea. No, nobody's told me. No, you guys will be splitting up. Oh, see, Grayson doesn't know that yet. Okay. It's July. What else do you have to do but go to an SEO meetup? Last thing is our first beer is more of an honor system, so please feel free. The taps are still open, okay? Thanks a lot, guys.